let's just press pause because Nick Caserio, general manager of the Texans, had his, and it wasn't like a special emergency press conference. I think some people got that impression. Texans are on a bye week. That's usually when, during the regular season, we'll hear from the general manager of the team. It may even be required because it seems to happen pretty regularly when teams
feels
are on
like
bye
it's required,
week.
right.
Yeah, so here's Caserio from yesterday on the subject of the Azeez Al-Shaair suspension for the concussion-inducing hit on Trevor Lawrence.
And for the league to make some of the commentary that they made about lack of sportsmanship, lack of coachability, lack of paying attention to the rules, quite frankly, it's embarrassing. So I think the big thing from our – and I talk about a player who's never been suspended, never been ejected. So now we're saying that he's going to be suspended for 3 games? So, look, it is what it is. I think the big thing from our standpoint, and all teams want this, is just some level of consistency. And we've talked to the league, quite frankly, but we don't have a good explanation. D'Amico talked to them yesterday. So, I mean, it is what it is. I'm sure Azeez will go through whatever process he's going to go through, and then we'll deal with it accordingly. But I think what we take umbrage is just the picture that's been painted about Azeez, his intentions, who he is as a person. I mean, quite frankly, it's bull, and it's unfair to the individual. It's unfair to the organization. I mean, we love everything about Azeez Al-Shaair, what he means to this team, what he brings to this team. He was elected a captain after being here for 4 months.
It's pretty strong stuff from a guy who doesn't have a history of
way to
saying
go, Nick
strong
Caserio.
stuff.
Right.
And when I first heard that Nick Caserio called the fine and the suspension, not the fine, but the suspension bullshit, I thought he was referring to the substance of it. What he's referring to is the way it's been characterized. And I think he's overstating a little bit the strength of the letter from John Runyon to Azeez Al-Shaair.
Yeah.
I'll agree that it does paint him as a bad guy, but it's not quite as over the top as Nick Caserio is saying. It's just gutsy to kind of stick your finger in the eye of Big Shield. And as somebody who, you know,
does that
plenty
quite
of
often?
scars on his fingers from 23 years of doing it,
Right.
I say bravo, good sir. You always have to be willing to stand up to the NFL and point out when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. I just thought, look, you got to defend your guy.
That's right.
You got to defend your guy.
Right.
And I feel like that's part of it. But look, there's an appeal process. And my first reaction was it's just best to not say anything until after we know what the final verdict is through one of the 4 individuals, Derek Brooks, Ramon Foster, Kevin Mawai, and Jordy Nelson. One of those 4 will handle the appeal. And even though they're not league employees directly, they're part of this structure.
Yeah.
And you don't want to you don't want to be dropping turds in punch bowls while there's still a process to play out. So that part made me nervous, even though it's not the league that makes the final decision.
No, I think, you said it. He's sticking up for his guy. He's sticking up for a guy that is like extremely well respected. I think that's the big thing, right? He plays hard for the most part, has up to this point plays the game the way every defensive coach wants their middle linebacker to play. He was loved in San Francisco with that group there and D'Amico Ryan, and that's why he's there, right? I think what Nick Caserio is talking about is he's probably going, wait, the 3 games seems a little egregious. And he's talking about, he's never been suspended in those issues. To say the unsportsmanlike part, I'll disagree with Nick Caserio there. Shaair went a little crazy on the field. So there definitely was some unsportsmanlike attitude. But at the same time, too, I do think it went overboard with some of the talk, some of the things you see on social media and all that. And I think that's also what he's sticking up for, because people have taken liberty of just going, religion, color of skin, all the bull crap that you don't want to hear. Has nothing to do with anything. And that's where it's freaking wrong, the whole subject. And that's where I don't like that. And I think that's where Nick Caserio is sticking up for a guy who he goes, he's a leader of our team. He loves football. He plays really hard. He's intense, and he had a bad moment. And most football players have had some bad moments where they just go a little too far and go, I got to the red line, I didn't hit the brake, and I just went gas pedal. And then, of course, tempers flared from everybody. I mean, Evan Ingram decks him in the back, and, of course, what'd you think? Azeez Al-Shaair was going to go, thank you, Mr. Ingram, and the rest of the team. So, I mean, that's part of football to a degree of what happened after that. And I don't think he should be so, just for lack of a better way, crapped on by everybody on social media because of it. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to there.
For somebody who doesn't pay attention to social media, you seem to be very aware of the social media reaction.
I do. Well, I see enough articles. I see enough to where I scroll through things just real quick to go through it and see what people are saying on the bottom of that. Yeah, I'm not one that's going to write social media, and I'm not sitting there going down a wormhole of other crap on social media that I don't care about. But when it comes to football and stuff, I scroll a little.
We continue to have a presence on Twitter because we've got a big footprint there, and I'm not giving it up. But I have spent less and less time in that hellscape.
Yeah, you can't. You just got to look at what you know and skip over the rest of the idiots in the world there.
But let me say this, and I may be wrong. I mean, you mentioned the possibility of Islamophobia and racism, and Azeez Al-Shaair had that in his own statement from Monday morning. I didn't see any of that. I mean, this is equal opportunity. That's an illegal hit. Color of your skin and your religion doesn't matter. That was an illegal, egregious hit. Now, maybe there's, the same incels out there that want to complain about anything and everything that anyone says.
Yeah, I think that's what it is a little.
We're saying that, but I didn't see any of that, and it's not. That's not the issue because it clouds the issue.
No,
the issue is
right.
The issue is he went in hot, elbow up, Bednarik style, and he blew up Trevor Lawrence because he thought he was getting a free shot. Hey, I'm getting a free shot. I'm taking it. I'm taking my free shot. That was the whole message that came from the way he went in and embraced that moment.
Yeah, no, I agree. And when you talk about the football aspect and all that, listen, I'm certainly not letting him off the hook. I mean, yeah, we talked about it. It's tough. It's a tough moment. It's a tough spot. But he's seen hundreds of quarterback slides since he's been in the NFL. He knows what it looks like, what it's about to look like, and he knows more times than not, like, the quarterback is going to slide. And the biggest thing is, like we talked about, he didn't do anything to stop. I'm not sticking up for that. I'm really not. But I think what I was saying is part of what Nick Caserio is sticking up for. It's not only the league, it's the chatter around it. And that's where it's not cool. And that's where you see, whether you go on Instagram and look at comments or Twitter, you do see some of that crap. And that's where it's stupid and it goes overboard. And I think that's probably why part of Nick Caserio coming out so strong, too.
And it really was surprising to see him say what he said. And there was enough in there that feels like it's being directed at the league, at John Runyon, at the press release, at the way this was handled. It makes you curious as to whether or not there's going to be any pushback for Nick Caserio because guys get fined a few times a year. We see it where after a game there's a comment that's critical of the officials, and the NFL has a pretty bright line when it comes to that. I wonder what the league's reaction will be when it comes to this, because I don't remember this happening.
No.
I don't remember a guy blowing a gasket like that. I'm not saying he was being irrational, but I don't remember that kind of vitriol being directed at the league after the league sends out a letter to a guy letting him know he's being suspended or otherwise punished.
Well, the other, like, how many personal fouls has he had through his career, right? Those are things like, I didn't look it up, right? I know the NFL would probably have all that stuff written down somewhere. But they have
a window. They have a window where they cut it off. I think they go back 2 years.
Yeah.
He had a fine for throwing a punch on the sideline after
remember
a questionable hit on Caleb Williams week 2.
Yep.
And there's a video out there of him. He's the guy who put his hand on Tom Brady's throat a few years ago when he was with the 49ers and Brady was with the Buccaneers. So those are the two that I've seen. There might be more that are out there. And again, put it in the letter. If you're going to if you're going to paint this guy as a villain and you have a history of this stuff, it's irresponsible, National Football League, and dare I say, to quote Nick Caserio, bullshit, to not identify all the things he did. Don't just say, this is a bad guy. Here's the setup. This is a bad guy.
Well, your continued disregard, that's the one that would
Before we impose punishment, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, before we impose punishment on this individual, we must tell you this. This is a bad guy. It's ridiculous.
What's your pasta and meatballs?
You got to tell us.
Yeah.
You got to tell us.
What's your pasta and meatballs tell you? You think this 3 games gets upheld, or do you think it gets cut down to 2 after some, deliberation there?
I don't know that this happens, but I think human nature would suggest that at some level it does. And I'd love to have a conversation off the record with Derek Brooks about it if he'd ever be candid. And I don't know that he would be, because it's a job that he's held for several years, and I suspect it doesn't pay an insubstantial amount of money. I have a feeling there's probably times when these hearing officers get the impression, directly or indirectly, that the league feels pretty strongly about this one.
Right. Stand your ground.
If you want to keep doing this, this is probably an area to exercise some discretion. Now, because think about this. We haven't heard a damn thing from the NFL Players Association. We haven't heard a single word. Now, they're in a tough spot because they got to protect both guys. But we haven't heard anyone from the NFLPA come out and say this was aggressive or excessive. I pulled a Simpsons. I pulled a Simpsons, and it was actually a word, but it wasn't the right word. I was going for egregious and excessive, and I said aggressive, but aggressive is a word. This was egregious and or excessive. So to me, if I'm the person who likes this job, and at some level I'm getting the vibe as to who am I going to piss off with this ruling, I'm going to be more likely to piss off the NFL if I reduce it than I'll piss off the NFLPA if I don't. And if you think that's cynical, well, welcome to reality. Because that's what people do when they're caught in a situation like that.
No, I know that. I know. I mean, it's a crazy situation. I'm going to be interested here. You know, you bring up Derek Brooks, who I've known for a long time, right? And he certainly loves football, knows football. He's also going to have a soft spot for a linebacker and what they got to do, him being an all-time great linebacker himself. I'm interested to see how this all plays out. I really am. And then, I mean, let's get to it now, because I think we've
hang on
okay,
one second.
Okay,
hang on one
ahead.
second.
Yeah.
Because two items of business before we move forward.
Right.
Number one, Al-Shaair was just fined last week $11,255 for a late hit out of bounds on running back Tony Pollard of the Titans. And week 2, we mentioned the punch on Roschon Johnson,
yep.
$11,817 out of bounds punch. There's the late
that's
hit.
Very
late. That's late.
Yeah.
That's late.
Yeah.
That's late.
That to me is,
taking a shot at the guy.
I think what we probably need to, or somebody out there, and maybe we'll do this for tomorrow's show, research a little bit more in-depthly. Because I do think that there might be a history of this type of stuff. The late hit out of bounds type of stuff, and even that there.
Show that one again.
That's crazy. That's crazy egregious right there. Yeah.
The punches. He's still in bounds here. Can we re-rack that? Because Caleb Williams is a guy that I want to mention too.
Yeah, he does this
forward with the Brady stuff, because he's kind of he slows down and stops in bounds like Caleb. You got to have better control of your body. You don't slow down and stop in bounds.
Well, he got stuck. I think he got stuck. I think he was afraid if he kept going full speed, it was just going to make the contact even worse. He knew.
Just step out, run out of bounds. You have to know how your body fits in relation to the other bodies. Just run out of bounds. Patrick Mahomes is the master at that. Deshaun Watson, back when he was good, he was the master at that. His body in time and space among the other bodies. It looks awkward and ungainly. It's like, hey, man, you have an obligation to protect yourself on a football field. And Caleb Williams failed in that regard. You don't pull up to a stop in bounds.
Yeah, listen, I think that's a rookie who just is like, whoa, linebackers are a little faster than I thought. I thought I'd be able to get out of bounds, and I didn't get there.
He hasn't learned.
He
hasn't learned by week 13.
Well, yeah, he pushes the limit. He'd be another one. He would. But that's, to me, what I think maybe more of what the NFL is talking about. And again, bad on me. I should have researched this more last night to go back and look. Shaair, personal fouls, late hits, the last few years. I guarantee that's part of this whole process and John Runyon's thinking as well.
That's not your job. And it's not my job.
No,
it's the NFL's job.
Yeah.
If you're going to set the table for a 3-game suspension for Azeez Al-Shaair by painting him as a villain, you need to bring the goods. You need to show us the bodies. If this is a bad guy that's been shooting up towns all over the Old West, you got to show us. You can't just say it. You got to give us the proof, National Football League. So it's disappointing that the league didn't do it. 2 this year, the hand on Tommy's throat, thou shalt not touch the great and powerful goat. So I don't know if he got punished for that. And again, I remember at some point when they really started to be aggressive with fines, and we're increasing the fines, and we increase the fines, and eventually we suspend you. It's what we did to Derwin James earlier this year. It's the whole concept of progressive discipline. We're going to impose a low-level fine in the hopes that it works. If it doesn't, then you get fined more. If that doesn't work, then you get fined more, and at some point you get suspended. That every responsible organization in America has a system of progressive discipline. If this is progressive, it's excessive because you're going from 11 to 11 to like either the history did matter or it didn't. And I don't think the history should matter for something that egregious. I just think this is part of the political effort to paint him as a bad guy. You don't need to paint him as a bad guy. And if you're going to paint him as a bad guy, you better bring the paint. You better show us what he did. That's my biggest disappointment with the NFL.
Yeah, I get you.
It was trust us, this guy deserves it.
Right. I'm with you there. That is not the right way to do it. If you're going to paint him like that, you're right. Bring the evidence, show us what it is and why you're doing this and why you're making a comment about lack of respect and sportsmanship and, all the other factors of history's past and why you did this. Yeah, you're right about that. I don't disagree with you, Mike, at all.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.